With the same rules that we dealt with through the House District debates. A 1-minute introduction, 90 seconds to answer the questions, and a 1-minute close as well. Lots were drawn to give us our order tonight. Forrest Chadwick, Paul Bertolio, Bob Scheller, Matt Keating. We'd like to start this evening with introductions. Mr. Chadwick, you have 60 seconds for your introduction.
I'm Forrest Chadwick. I was born and raised in Casper. I have spent all but 7 of my 40-year oil field career here in Casper. With the last 20-plus years of that managing a highly successful supply company. During that time, I was active in my community, serving in leadership roles on our homeowners association, water board, improvement district, improvement service district, and children's activities. Spent 10 years on the Fair Board. The last 3.5 years I've spent tending to the daily business of Natrona County as a commissioner, with 2 of that as chairman. My participation in the issues affecting Natrona County have been numerous, from budget to land use planning, to payments in lieu of taxes. The skills and experience I've gained, I believe, will be invaluable to the future of Natrona County.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Mr. Bertolio, 60 seconds.
Thank you, Brian. First, I'd like to thank the Republican Party and the Republican women for hosting tonight's debate. I am Paul Bertolio. Many of you may recognize me from my 16-plus years as a member of the Casper City Council and 3 terms as its mayor. I'm a managing partner in 3 oil field-related businesses, father of 3 daughters, soon to be a first-time grandfather, and proud to call Casper and Natrona County my home. In all my businesses and public-related activities, I have always taken a leadership role. Through all these roles, I have learned how to lead, how to work cooperatively even when I totally disagree, how to respect other people's opinions, and most importantly, how to take a stand and fight for what I believe is right. I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scheller, 60 seconds for introduction.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Bob Scheller. I've lived in Natrona County all of my life, and I've worked in agriculture for about the last 20 years. I work for the Natrona County Weed and Pest. I do all of their GIS work, insect releases, certified hay. I travel all of the county roads on a daily basis. I've worked inside the municipality for landowners as well. So I really do get around to all 4 corners of the county and have for a long, long time. In 2012, I was elected to the Natrona County Conservation District, where I served as chairman after the 2nd meeting and continue to do so. My term will be up this year. And I have also coached diving and swimming for the local high schools, operated heavy equipment for the city of Casper, and now, of course, I'm the mouthpiece for the Weed and Pest and help with daily operations and budgeting issues. Thank you.
Mr. Keating, the same, 60 seconds for introduction.
My name's Matt Keating, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for coming tonight. I was born in Wyoming, raised in Casper. I am a conservative. I've been on the commission for 12 years. Growing up in Wyoming, I've seen the boom and I've seen the bust. I believe as commissioner I've got the expertise wherever to deal with the downturn. But when you guys are looking at who to vote for, you really have to spend some time with the person, right? If you were to spend some time on my porch at home, you would see we live in a modest home. You see I have a beautiful wife and 8 kids. I've got a daughter that just graduated. She's going to be a special ed teacher. I've got a son who I think is probably going to end up in business. I've got a son that leaves next month. The kid's going to be a doctor. I've got, I think, a gymnast and a jetpack maker. Okay? But these are really things that I value, things that I love, and
Thank you, Mr. Keating. We'll start with the questions. Mr. Chadwick, we'll start with the first question. As a county commissioner, how would you assist the different agencies in diversifying the economy of Natrona County?
Well, and we already do quite a bit of that through CADA and the Economic Development Joint Powers Board, which I am on that board. The Economic Development Joint Powers Board spends a lot of time helping CADA and providing funding to CADA so that we can bring new businesses to town. We can support those that are already here, need to expand, want to expand. We can help them find the funding to expand. The expansion of our economy, this is the time to not stand still. We have to move forward. Even though a lot of times the funding doesn't seem to be there, those funds oftentimes are there, and sometimes those projects have to get curbed. We have to pull back on how far and how fast we're going to go, and we do. Recently, we approved a, believe it or not, shrimp farm at Midwest through the Economic Development Joint Powers Board. That is diversification to the extreme. Now, there was some question as to whether there was any collateral for those dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Mr. Bertolio, same question. As a county commissioner, how would you assist the different agencies in diversifying the economy of Natrona County?
Well, thank you, Brian. I have probably done more in trying to build relationships, and CADA is just one avenue. I've served on CADA in the past. I think CADA is very vital, often an unsung hero in our community. They work behind the scenes, and they're just one avenue we can look to build and diversify our economy. Building relationships not just with someone like CADA, but also with our fellow communities and the private businesses. We've been very successful in accomplishing a lot of tasks and a lot of key infrastructure by partnering with people. And sometimes they're controversial. A lot of people do not like government and private business mixing, but when that does find the right, when you do find the right project, oftentimes the only way it's going to happen is that private-public relationship. And so it's just continue to do what I did when I was on the city council, and that's work with other entities and build that relationship and look to where we can fund and where we can't fund locally is to try and find funds outside. Oftentimes that may be the state. Thank you.
Mr. Scheller, as a county commissioner, how would you assist the different agencies in diversifying the economy of Natrona County?
I think first and foremost, keeping a good track of our maintenance on our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our tax code locally, making sure that stays friendly for local business. I am the only guy here at the table that has not had experience with CADA, and I guess looking in from the outside, it sounds like a great idea to have those kind of partnerships. However, I think we really need to scrutinize how those dollars are spent and what the return is to the public. What's the longevity for businesses that are coming out of the incubator? Are they coming out of the incubator? Are they staying there and capitalizing on that piece of real estate that is supposed to be a kind of a high turnover piece of ground for other businesses to move into in the future? So I do think that there is some room for scrutiny with CADA. I do think it's a large sum of money that the county and city both dole out to those folks, and I don't think they would have a problem with the scrutiny. I just think that we need to have new energy on the board, maybe not to change policy, but to inject new blood with new energy and open up more dialogue and make sure that's what we need to do with public money regarding private business ventures.
Mr. Keating, as a county commissioner, how would you assist the different agencies in diversifying the economy of Natrona County?
Well, in Wyoming, we're commodity driven, and it's really the best thing that we could do to help diversify businesses in Wyoming is get the hell out of the way. You know, that we private industry spends tens of millions of dollars every year to protect the sage grouse, and the conversation, when you have that conversation, the premise of the conversation needs to include the fact that we are good stewards. At the same time, you've got another agency, the Game and Fish, allows hunting in excess of 10,000 sage grouse every year. So it's not an honest conversation. What we need to do is we need to plan. If we're going to have growth, And but that people moving in or people leaving our community really is dependent on the price of the commodities, the oil, gas, and the coal. So we need to plan where growth is going to happen, and we need to stop getting involved in choosing winners and losers in our community.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Bertolio, in these lean times, what kind of budget cuts would you be in favor of?
Thank you, Brian. First, I'd focus on what I think are the priorities of the local government, and that started back in the days when towns were formed, and that's first, public safety, second, infrastructure, and then you start focusing on wants in your community. But first, I would make sure that we have the public safety sector covered. I would not want to get too carried away with cutting into our infrastructure. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. When it comes to the other side, some of us would call wants, in a lot of cases, are needs by individuals. I know the county provides a lot of services for those in indigent care, and we have to be very careful on how we start cutting that. It's a challenge, just like everyone else that has a tight budget or, and obviously being in the oil field right now, I can tell you it's pretty lean times out there. You do what you have to do to get by, and hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Mr. Scheller, same question. In these lean times, what kind of budget cuts would you be in favor of?
Well, that's a difficult question for somebody that's never sat in the county commission chair before, but I think that the first thing that I would do is give a directive to all of our both elected and hired oversight of all of our local agencies to cut a given percentage, whatever the revenue shortfall was going to be, and see what they brought back to the table before I felt as though I would have to put my hands into their operation and make cuts for them. So I think I would leave it more to our local leadership that is in charge of fire, in charge of the police or the sheriff's office, in charge of road and bridge and parks. Weed and pest would be another one. And I think that collectively those folks know what they're doing enough to make those budget cuts suitable for everyone involved.
Mr. Keating, same question. In these lean times, what kind of budget cuts would you be in favor of?
Understanding that we are commodity driven, I talked to the commission, I think it was September of last year, pointing out, not that they didn't already know, that our revenues are going to start dropping off. And I told them then that my priority as a commissioner are the top 5 elected officials. That's clerk of district court, assessor, treasurer, sheriff, and the agencies that are underneath the commission, especially road and bridges and county adopted roads and county adopted bridges. Basically our infrastructure, public service, those kinds of things. Outside of that is where I would start looking at cuts.
Thank you. Mr. Chadwick, same question. In these lean times, what kind of budget cuts would you be in favor of?
And as Commissioner Keating said, we started that process way early last year by putting out a letter to all of our department heads, to all of our fellow electeds, tell us or start thinking about and tell us, and we set the date in early December, tell us what it will do to your department to make X cut. So we got that response and worked from there. It turned out that it was pretty spot on where we thought we were going to have to cut. The department's heads did a very good job, and so did our fellow electeds. One thing I will tell you is that the budget is not a single issue. It's an everyday issue. We work on that continually. There's always something coming up. Alcova Bridge. One of our trucks ran over a car last weekend. There's always something that's coming up. We got a $70,000 check from Bar None. So on the revenue side, we're already up. So there's always things happening. You always have to make adjustments, and you have to stay nimble enough to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Schiller, are you in favor of a new library, and why or why not?
Well, I guess that's a two-part question. I like the library, I like books, I like to read, and I think it's an important element in any community. However, when the revenues are down, that we have a library, and right now that's a want, not a need. And so I would vote against it because I would have to surmise that the public would want me to vote against it. If I heard otherwise, we would have that discussion. But keep in mind that most of the time, the county commissioners are representing what I consider a silent majority. Folks don't have time to come to meetings. They don't really want to come to meetings. So usually the flack that is caught from a vote is after the fact. So in knowing that revenue downturns are here and going to continue, I guess for the short term, I would vote no on a new library for now.
Mr. Keating, same question. Are you in favor of a new library, and why or why not?
I am in favor of a new library, but not now is really the wrong time to do that. We do have a library, and that's fantastic. You know, in good times, you can have those types of conversations. In bad times, people are using the library to you know, research different needs, maybe learn a new trade. My son Joseph is here tonight, and he read everything in the junior department at the library. In his Lexile, he came back home and told me it was 1,500. I'm not well read enough to know what a Lexile is. The kid's brilliant, but I really have to give some credit. You know, most credit was my wife, but some credit honestly to the use of the library.
Mr. Chadwick, are you in favor of a new library, and why or why not?
I don't think there's very many people in the community that are against having a really nice library. It has to make economic sense. And as such, we created a committee that includes city council, school district, and commissioners. That committee is currently passed off to the Library Foundation the task of identifying or coming up with a needs assessment. What does a new library in Casper, in Natrona County, or a current library, what should it look like? Should it be more electronic than books? Many questions that they're dealing with. Now, we already know that since the last needs assessment was done 5-6 years ago, that need has changed. So the direction that we have given that group is make your recommendations broad enough to fit the needs of this community 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. Let's look ahead. What is it going to take to have a library that is functional for Natrona County?
Thank you. Mr. Bertolio, same question. Are you in favor of a new library, and why or why not?
I've always supported the concept of a new library. I believe our library is now something similar to what our Youth Crisis Center is or was. Years ago, they were struggling financially. They came to the city and said, you know, we need some money. And the more I talked with those representatives, it became clear that the Youth Crisis Center wasn't fitting the basic needs of the community. And I see that in our current library. As we look to the future, we need to have a library that meets those future needs. And as Commissioner Chadwick has just alluded to, that's what needs to be done. I think it has failed in the past in the public's eyes because they didn't see that concept. They saw a lot of open spaces for meetings and stuff, and I don't think it was sold properly. As a commissioner, I don't believe I should be voting on it. I believe this is what the 5th cents or the 6th cents for. I think the public either has to get behind it and say it's a valuable asset for our community, and it has to be shown that it's a valuable asset, and then they can decide if they want to spend that 6 cent Because last thing I want is to go in debt. And I think that's one of the things in Natrona County we can be very proud of, is our governments do not operate in a debt structure.
Let's talk about that 1 cent money. And the next question, Mr. Keating. Are you in favor of the 1 cent money, and what projects or areas should the commission fund with those dollars?
Well, the 1 cent money has been used appropriately in most areas. Vehicles for road and bridge to help improve the 800 miles of roads that we have, and vehicles for the sheriff's department, helping protect and keep us safe. It's I'm in favor of the 1 cent. It's as long as it's used appropriately.
Mr. Chadwick, same question. Are you in favor of the 1 cent money, and what projects or areas should the commissioners fund with those dollars?
During the last election cycle, when it was voted on, the Chamber of Commerce had a 1 cent committee that went around the community and held numerous meetings on what would you, the public, like to see those dollars spent on. And then, of course, that creates a priority list. At the top of that list were roads and bridges. Now, in our current revenue shortfall, one of the dangers is not keeping our roads maintained. What happens is your foot-wide pothole, 3-inch deep pothole, becomes 18 inches wide and 5 inches deep the next year. And when you multiply that by numerous potholes, suddenly you've got a multi-million-dollar project where you only had a $1 million project to start with. So we have to keep those roads in as good a shape as we can. The second priority out of those 1 cent surveys were emergency services. And of course that includes our sheriff's department. And they are about, I believe the number is 30% of our total budget now.
Thank you. Mr. Bertolio, same question. Are you in favor of the 1 cent money, and what projects or areas should the commissioners fund with those dollars?
Thank you. I am 100% in support of the 1 cent. It's not just the commission, the county commissioners that have to deal with budget issues that rely on that 1 cent. All the sister communities in Natrona County rely on that, and in some, especially the smaller communities, they operate a lot of their budget with the 1 cent. Without the 1 cent, they would see drastic cuts in basic services. The city of Casper often is lambasted because we get so much of it, and we do the neat projects. But without that 1 cent, the city of Casper would suffer. They, like the county commissioners, are faced with trying to fund roads, bridges, public safety equipment. All that comes because we have the 1 cent. Without the 1 cent, I can tell you that Natrona County would not be the place to live that it is right now.
Mr. Scheller, are you in favor of the 1 cent money, and what projects or areas should the commissioners fund with those dollars?
Well, I am in favor of the 1 cent tax, mainly because it was put on the ballot and voted on by the public at large. And if the public became as engaged with the rest of their tax dollars, we would have a full room of people tonight, and probably plus some. The public pays very good attention to the 1 cent money and whether it passes or not, and scrutinizes its expenditures whenever they arise. So I think it's a great deal. I think we're taking out-of-state money and keeping it here at home when they pass through town. We would not want to bite the hand that is feeding us, so to speak. How we spend that money, I'm not going to comment on that. I think as long as we can put it in the bank, we can have those discussions as they arise with the sheriff department, with the road and bridge, or whatever other project comes across the table in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Last question, and goes to Mr. Chadwick. To start, should the commission develop more recreational areas in Natrona County?
Our Parks Department budget is not a major part of our budget. However, what we currently do in parks and recreation costs a lot. Can we do more? Of course, you can always do more. But is that a priority? Given our budget situation, probably not. One of the issues that comes up regularly is out at Alcova, Pathfinder, Gray Reef. Those are all owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. We have control of that through a memorandum of agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation. So that falls under our Parks Department. We get revenues off of that. Those revenues amount to somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 a year. Problem is, all those dollars have to stay at Alcova, Pathfinder, and Gray Reef. Have to be spent there. So we cannot take those dollars elsewhere and use them. They're restricted. And when you look at our budget, you'll see that because we always park that out because it is restricted. As far as recreation go, I don't see it as a priority.
Mr. Bertolio, should the commission develop more recreational areas in Natrona County?
At this point, I would say no. And then even as you look into the future, I'd be hesitant. I think we have some fine facilities in the county. Keeping them up is going to be a continuing need and probably growing. To put new facilities in, as is most want, or what I would call a recreational area a want rather than a need, they are going to take additional assets that probably should be directed towards the growing needs within the county. So I would first focus on probably upgrading what is available if there are upgrades that are necessary. And then as you look at potential new recreational areas, I would be looking at what is the true cost going forward of operating those facilities. Thank you.
Mr. Scheller, should the commission develop more recreational areas in Natrona County?
I think the commission should develop more partnerships for recreational areas in the county. I don't know that the commission needs to spend capital on those projects. We already have county park land that is ripe for partnerships with civic groups and other local citizenry that would love to help improve those areas. And as far as the maintenance costs, a simple MOU with any civic organization could deter a lot of those costs. I do put a value on recreation. I think it is what keeps some of the younger working class folks around this country. If all you get to do is work in Casper, Wyoming, and that's it, you may or may not stick around. And then we feel that on the backside of things. So I do put value on recreation. I do not think that the county needs to spend dollars on it. I do think that they need to work harder on partnering with the local community to improve some of the areas that we have.
Mr. Keating, should the commission develop more recreational areas in Natrona County?
No, but we can, just like Forrest was talking about, we can use the monies that have to stay at the lake to improve that facility. And especially not now, we don't want to have that conversation in a downturn. Although there are, as Bob alluded to, we can have partnerships with people like the Rotary Park doing in-kind services, improving areas, improving parks, improving trails, except for like amphitheaters, etc. Forgive me for that, right? But no.
Thank you. We've made it through our questions. Now we have 60 seconds to close. Mr. Keating, I'll stay with you on that end. 60 seconds for your final thoughts.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate your time again tonight. Again, we are commodity driven. I think we have seen the bottom of the downturn, and we're starting to pick up a little bit. I hired a company this morning to run frac water. We're going to do a little bit of drilling. I know the Trues, the Wolves, SM, EOG, everybody's starting to drill a little bit. So I think it's starting to open up a little bit. It's my understanding the coal mine, at least one of the coal mines, brought 50 back, and the railroad brought 100 back. Our economy is commodity driven, and it's proven to be cyclic. So I think we've struggled. We're going to come out of this leaner and meaner, and I think there are positive times ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Scheller, 60 seconds for final thoughts.
I too would like to thank everyone for coming. I think that everyone here knows that it's your right to vote, but it's your obligation to become informed. And you are a very small group of people considering the population of Natrona County, so we have to rely on you to spread the message that you've heard today with all of the candidates, and I hope you'll do that. You don't know any of us personally. What I hope that you will vote for is someone that you feel is an open book, someone that's very approachable, that will listen to your concerns, and will continue to manage the county in a way that keeps the county debt-free. All of us may be that person, so you've got 4 great people to work with right here. I would ask that you consider injecting new blood into a board every 4 years, not just this time around, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Bertolio, final thoughts?
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and the Republican Party and the Republican women for hosting tonight's event. As a member of the Board of County Commissioners, I will bring to the table my years of experience working with local and state officials to get things done. I've always believed that a united Natrona County is much stronger than any single one of its parts. When I was president of the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, I often stated that Natrona County was an excellent model for other counties to follow as to how governments can work effectively together. As a commissioner, I pledge to once again bring my enthusiasm for public service to every meeting and to every citizen, to work actively and cooperatively with my fellow commissioners to focus on the big picture issues and not to get lost in the trivial, to respect property rights and the rights of all individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chadwick, 60 seconds for final thoughts.
There's a multitude of issues that face Natrona County. And as I go forward as a commissioner, I see new things almost daily. Because our society has changed fairly dramatically. We can't do things like we used to do things. We have to be more attentive to the statutes. We have to suck it up and make things work with the dollars we have. The issues that face us, there's just not enough time to get into them all here tonight. But I'm there every day till usually around noon with fellow electeds, board chairman coming in, the public coming in to talk to. So feel free to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, your county commission candidates. I will remind everybody that the state primary 3 weeks from today. Get educated, get informed, go vote, drag everybody you know out to vote. Again, our thanks to the Natrona County Republican women, the Natrona County Republican Party. My name is Brian Scott. Thank you for your time and your attention.
And thank you for coming. And candidates, please remember to take your signs as you go out. They're left over from the parade float. Thank you for all of my volunteers. And yes, go vote and remind everybody to vote. That's right. I'm fat.